Okay, Professor Downs. So, prior to the official announcements, what were some of the things you heard in previous meetings leading up to the announcement itself?
The existence of IPFW actually for a long time was a little difficult because you basically had two institutions operating under one umbrella, and that was not always an easy thing to do. We had issues, for example, with how the registrar kept track of transcripts. We had issues with students a long time ago figuring out how to switch from one major that was in one university to another major in a different university. A lot of those things got worked out, but they were always a little painful because it was not what would normally happen on a university campus. There were a series of studies that were done leading up to the moment that the separation took place. And the biggest moment leading up to that, by some people's account, was when the Indiana General Assembly created a working group to look at the institution here known as IPFW. The thought at the time was, let's figure out how to deal with the biggest issues so that IPFW remains IPFW. As that group began doing its work, there actually was a vote that said, let's keep it IPFW and try to change what's not working well. And then shortly after that vote, there was a new proposal, and that proposal was to split. And that proposal was basically a done deal by the time it was presented to the broader group.
I was told that when the announcement was settled, that there was a bit of a disagreement there. It wasn't necessarily a unanimous vote there. So, kind of, do you recall some of the staff that were maybe in the meetings that maybe voiced a disagreement with the splitting of the campus?
Well, the vote took place among the body that was created by the General Assembly, and it was not a unanimous vote. There actually were two no votes, the Chancellor and a faculty representative, who voted no on it.
Okay. Once the announcement was officially made, what was your reaction to it, and how did your department kind of react to the announcement, as well as the student body itself?
I'm a member of the Department of Political Science, and we believed that it was a bad idea. As a department, we believed that. I, as an individual, believed that. The argument that by separating, each institution would be able to focus on its core strengths and theoretically provide better educational opportunities and research and development and creative endeavor opportunities for the area, I thought were not compelling, because I thought that could happen as IPFW. Obviously, we won't know the answer to that until several years pass.
So one of the things that was discussed in terms of the challenges of the change here is now there's a lack of trust with the campus itself. Do you feel like that's where you lean towards, or do you think there are other factors that have resulted from the change that we have right here today?
There are a number of things that were happening at the same time, and they often get conflated with one another. We were actually going through a moment of declining enrollment, which was causing financial difficulties for us. There was a lot of bad press out in the community because supposedly IPFW couldn't figure out how to work together as an institution. There were people who were opposed to the split, who were vocal. There were people who were in favor of it, both sides being critical of the other. So there was a lot of bad going on at the same time. But compounding the problem was that there were programs that were eliminated. And when that happens, obviously those programs feel a great sense of loss, and quite frankly the entire university feels a loss, because we are a comprehensive university, and removing of a program means we are less comprehensive. There still are people who are focused on that from the past. There are a number of people who've moved forward. There certainly is an environment today that is different than the environment, say, 20 years ago, in terms of what is this place, now IU Fort Wayne and Purdue Fort Wayne, versus what was IPFW.
It's interesting you brought up enrollment, because as of spring 2020, there actually is an increase from, I think it was like 10,000 or something, spring 2018 to, like, I think if you combine the numbers from IU, FW, and PFW, it's like around over 13,000. And then you look at the degrees, political science had 70 degrees declared in spring 2017. That number went up to 214 as of this semester. So kind of give me your thoughts about that. Like, is that a little bit deceiving in terms of the statistical aspects of it?
Whenever you look at data and you look at trends, you have to keep in mind what's the time period you're looking at. when I said there was a decline in enrollment, I was talking about at the time that realignment was being discussed. There had definitely been a decline in enrollment throughout the entire campus. Since then, and actually beginning slightly before that, there were some programs that were rebounding. Some have actually never declined, but there were a number that had started to rebound. These things run in cycles, and what you're seeing now is evidence of that. You can look across the campus and see a number of programs that have actually seen upticks. Now, that's not necessarily an argument that says that the realignment was a bad idea. That's simply a reality of what happens in terms of enrollments.
Yeah. So I would say, 5 years or so down the road, where do you like to see the campus grow in the distant future, if you can? What improvements do you think need to happen for the campus to continue to grow as it is?
I think that there are a number of growing pains that we're going to have to go through as two separate institutions now. We are supposed to provide a seamless educational, research, and creative endeavor service to our area. And there are issues that we have to work out. How do we move things back and forth as seamlessly as possible? And those things will get worked out. I would expect within 5 years we will have made our way through most of those things. I think that we'll also probably be we will much more clearly understand what our domains are. And that will be good because people will have a better understanding of the community of which institution they come to for service. But it will always be important that no matter how somebody gets here, if their need is met by the other institution, we've got to be able to move them over there as easily as possible. And that will remain a challenge, I think, for a long time to come.
All right. Any final comments you have on what we've discussed this afternoon?
Sure. One thing that usually happens at the start of one of these interviews is the person doing the interviewing asks the interviewee to say and spell their name and title so that you are able to create lower thirds and those sorts of things. So my name is Andrew Downs, ANDREWDOWNS. I am an associate professor of political science in the Department of Political Science. I am currently the interim chair of the Department of Public Policy. And if you go back and check, I was the other no vote on the legislatively created study committee that voted on the realignment. So I was the presiding officer at the time of the Senate, and that's the reason some people suggest that maybe I have opinions.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.